Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Winter is coming, or actually it's already here. So it is time for my winter TBR. I hear a lot of my friends on BookTube doing these plans for 2023 videos, and I'm thinking, I just can't plan that far in advance, but I will stick to my humble but highly aspirational seasonal TBR. So here we go, winter TBR. Actually, I've already read Holy Sister by Mark Lawrence, finishing off the Book of the Ancestor. I'm counting it because I read it when winter started. So yeah, it's part of my winter TBR. There will be a review, my thoughts on the Book of the Ancestor trilogy, why you should read, that sort of thing. I loved this trilogy. Mark Lawrence has been 9 for 9 for me so far, and just thought this was maybe, I mean, this is recency bias speaking perhaps, but it might be my favorite trilogy by Mark Lawrence so far. I really enjoyed Book of the Ancestor, so I will be sharing my thoughts in a video dedicated review of the trilogy. Also, I will be having a discussion of the trilogy with Do Unicorns Read? So that is going to be a lot of fun. That should be taking place in January. Next, actually what I'm reading right now is R. Scott Baker's The Thousandfold Thought. I will be finishing this before the end of the year, I'm sure. And I continue to be impressed by R. Scott Baker's writing. I have heard so much praise, and I can see that the praise is indeed warranted for R. Scott Baker's Prince of Nothing trilogy. This is the final book in the trilogy, and I have been in discussions with Jimmy and Raph and Joanna about each of the first 2 books. We will be having our discussion on The Thousandfold Thought in early January. I will also be releasing a dedicated review of the trilogy Prince of Nothing, sharing my thoughts before we have that discussion. I have a lot of thoughts. This is definitely a trilogy that makes you think, and Baker has my utmost respect for that. So I'm very excited to be finishing that initial trilogy. I will continue with the Second Apocalypse series. However, I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break. It is awfully bleak, as I've been saying, and I want to return to something perhaps that has a little more hope, perhaps a little more lighthearted, which is, speaking of which, there's Dresden Files. I don't know about hope, but it is definitely more lighthearted. This series so far has been a wonderful palate cleanser series for me. I've been slipping it in between bigger epic reads, and it is a much needed recharger for me, and I've enjoyed the humor in here a lot. I do know that it gets more and more epic as the series continues, and I'm looking forward to finally arriving at that point in Dresden Files where I am totally in and can't resist reading another installment in the series from month to month. So I'll probably get to that point later in 2023. But for now, I'm on Blood Rights, book number 6, and I've been warned in advance it is, for many people, not the strongest book in the series. And so my expectations are set, I think, at an appropriate level. And I'm anticipating very much that I will continue to be more and more invested in the Dresden Files. And something I'm very, very excited about, I'm going to be in this read-along with Mike over at Mike's Book Reviews, and we're going to have discussions about, well, starting with Fool's Errand, and this, of course, is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy. So I'm going to be finishing The Realm of the Elderlings in 2023, beginning with Tawny Man. This will be Fool's Errand in January, and then I'll be reading book 2 of Tawny Man in February, and book 3 in March. And I will continue reading in The Realm of the Elderlings until I'm done with the series, which I'm very excited about. I read the first trilogy, Farseer, many years ago, and I read Live Ship Traders. I covered it on the channel a couple years ago, and it is high time for me to finish Robin Hobb, the queen of fantasy, one of my favorite writers already, just on the basis of those 2 trilogies that I've read, and I am sure, based on what I hear, that I'm going to love The Realm of the Elderlings even more by the time I'm finished. So, very excited about this, and it is one of the reads that I'm most anticipating in 2023. Guaranteed read in January. In fact, I probably want to start on the first with Fool's Errand. And then I am going to finally, I've been encouraged by a lot of Gemmel fans to get going here and it is high time for me to read some David Gemmell. I'm going to begin with Legend, and I'm going to be talking about this book with AP Canavan over at A Critical Dragon. Yes, we are going to have a collaboration on Legend. I'm going to read it in January, and he is on board, so that is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a nice little quick read for us, and a fun one. There's a little bit of story behind AP wanting me to read Legend, so I think we'll share that story when we get together to discuss it. So I'm very excited about this. And I'll be continuing with Vinland Saga. Now, Murphy Napier and I have already discussed the first half of this book. This is book 12 of Vinland Saga. And we had a wonderful time with those first 3 arcs. Just a fantastic time. My introduction to manga, and it couldn't have been better. The Viking setting, plus getting to talk with Murphy about the series, just couldn't be better. We are going to finish talking about Vinland Saga, however, because book 13 will be coming out in January. And so we've got half of book 12 to finish, as well as book 13. And we'll be done with Vinland Saga. And then moving on to another manga together. We're going to read Vagabond. So I'm very excited. I hear great things about that historical manga series. So great stuff. Another series that I have been putting off for the lifetime of the channel, and lots of people have urged me to read, is The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. This is widely considered to be, by many, one of the most challenging and awesome fantasies ever written. And so it is something that I am excited to be finally getting to in January. Probably, let's see, I already named a few books that I'll be reading in January. I'm hoping to get to this probably in late January. Maybe. I mean, these next few books that I'm reading are all series that I am committed to because I'm in buddy reads with various people. So Book of the New Sun is something I'm going to be reading with Matt from Matt on Books, and we are going to be joined perhaps by Ben from Overly Average Ben, and it is going to be an interesting one. It is going to be a very interesting read. Oh, no, Ben is going to be joining me for another read. What was that? Oh, that's Senlin Ascends. Yes, that's the next one. Ben, you can join us for this too. But no, Ben is going to be joining me for the Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. So there it is. And so I have so many buddy reads, I can't keep track of who's going to be reading them with me. But I'm going to be discussing this, of course, with Alan from the Library of Alexandria, because he is the person who has urged everyone in the entire universe to read the series Books of Babel. He's a major fan, so I will be discussing it with Alan, but Ben will be joining us, Ben from Overly Average Ben, and I am so looking forward to discussing this series, Books of Babel. Based on what I hear, I am going to love this series. It is something different, which I like, and I like risks in my fantasy, so let's see what Josiah Bancroft does. All right, and another one that I am planning to read with some buddies is book 1 of the Green Bones Saga, Jade City, and I'm going to get through the entire trilogy by Fonda Lee. And I will be joined in this read, or at least I will be discussing it with Taylor from Made Between the Pages and with Bookborn. So I hope that this is something I can get to maybe February or so. We shall see. But it is a series that I know I've heard a lot of praise for. Again, something a bit different from my normal read. This, I understand, is kind of a more urban fantasy. That's probably not the right label, I think, but it is not your typical epic fantasy sort of thing based on what I've heard with the comparisons to The Godfather and whatnot. But I'm very intrigued by everything I hear. I hear that Fonda Lee is a great writer and a very wonderful person, so I am very intrigued to finally get into this trilogy, Greenbone Saga. I also have here The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. And this is something after I watched the TV series they made recently, I thought to myself, boy, it's a shame I have not read The Sandman. I'm a major fan of American Gods. I love The Ocean at the End of the Lane. So it is time for me finally to read The Sandman. And I am very, very intrigued to see what I think. I'm sure, based on the television series, that I'm going to love what Gaiman does in here. I'm sure there's a lot of great, based on what I've read of his already, I know there's going to be a lot of great thematic work. And some some weirdness, I'm sure, which I'm very much up for. So that is going to be interesting, and I'm going to be talking about this when I get to it with Varsha over at Reading by the Rainy Mountain. Reading by the Rainy Mountain. That's it. So, too many channels to remember here. And then of course, the big read along that has unfortunately been postponed, but we will get to it, is of course The Wars of Light and Shadow by Johnny Wirtz. And I read and reviewed the first book, Curse of the Mistwraith, which I absolutely adored. You can see my review on that. Just fantastic stuff. And I'm so looking forward to progressing in this monumental fantasy series, this 11-book series with the Ships of Merior. We're going to have our discussion of Curse of the Mistwraith first, and we're going to do the giveaway. I have a copy of this book to give away, so that has not been forgotten, folks. It is still there. We've had to postpone it for various reasons, however, but we will get to it, and I will be making an announcement when we're getting close to that. So I'm sorry that has been delayed, but we shall get to it eventually, and I personally am very excited because I loved Curse of the Mistwraith. And some other things. These are a little lighter, perhaps reads, at least skinnier than most of my reads, and these are things I'm hoping just fit in here and there where I can. I need to read more Discworld, obviously, right? I've read only 4 books, and I've read a bit in the City Watch. I've read a bit of the Witches. I read some of the Wizard stuff, and so now it's time to introduce myself to Death, or at least Death in Discworld, right? Mort, I'm going to try to read one of the Death books from Discworld, and I know already I'm going to love it because I've loved the first 4 Discworld books, and I love Pratchett's brilliant wit, his sense of humor, his wordplay, you name it, his social critique. Let's not forget that because that's a big part of what's in there. Another one that I am very curious to read and have heard a little bit about, it's Sophia Samatar's A Stranger in Olandria. This is going to be an interesting one. It's not a very big book. I think I can squeeze it in just under 300 pages. So it is one that I'm very intrigued to read. I mentioned it, I think, on my previous TBR, and I didn't get to it in the fall, so it's one that I'll hope to squeeze in here during the winter. And a new one in my pile here. This is a wonderful little gift from Matt over on Matt on Books. Roger Zelazny's Lord of Light. And I've always wanted to read Zelazny's Amber Chronicles, but this would be a nice introduction to Zelazny's work, I think. It has some, I think, important influences for me. It has some Eastern mysticism and that sort of thing. So I am intrigued to see what this is all about. I don't think it's exactly fantasy. It might be more science fiction-y, but I'm going to read it anyway because I heard Matt talk about it on his channel, and it sounded really groovy. So we are going to check this out. And another one that I have been encouraged to read, and I'm going to slip it in. It's just a nice standalone. I hear great things about China Mieville's writing, Perdido Street Station. I am going to start with that for sure. I think that is probably one of his best-known works. And I know that Mieville does something different in every book, different from any other author, and that he is widely considered to be a very brilliant writer as well. So I am hopefully going to get to this finally during the winter months. And I've got here some Octavia Butler. I would love to get to Parable of the Sower. And to expand my reading of Octavia Butler, she is certainly a pillar, a foundation of the genre. And I'd love to see her getting some more attention on Fantasy BookTube. And I've got some Delaney here as well. This is a nice slim little volume. I need to read this. It's actually a collection of stories, Tales of Neverion. I think that's how you say that. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it, though. But yes, another very respected author, verging from also fantasy into kind of more literary fiction. And I think there's some very important themes that he tackles in here. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And some books that I was very fortunate to receive and I'm very excited to read. The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. I've heard this book being talked up by the brothers Gwyn, among others. It's by Shauna Lawless. It is Irish mythology and fantasy, and I am so excited to get to it because I just think that from what I've heard from Ed and Will and others, it's a fantastic story. And it is the beginning of a series as well. So I don't know much about the series, but I've heard great praise for this, and I am sure I am ready for some Celtic mythology. So this is going to be great. And continuing with the Ash and Sand trilogy. I really, it's been a while since I read the first book, the Kings of Paradise, and I am excited because I love that first book. I mean, that it has one of the most iconic characters in fantasy in Ruka, and I am dying to find out what happens with him and the other characters in book 2, Kings of Ash. So it is high time I continued with this fantastic trilogy. I even had a chance to talk to Richard Nell for the channel and had a great discussion with him. Wonderful guy. And so I'm looking forward to continuing in his trilogy. I also am so happy to have received P.L. Stewart's A Drowned Kingdom. I actually have this and his second book waiting to be read. I had a great discussion with PL for Dear Dr. Fantasy earlier this year. And what a fantastic person. And as he described the themes in here, I got more and more excited about reading it. So I'm really intrigued by what he's done here in A Drowned Kingdom. And so looking forward to having a chance maybe to talk to him again once I've read the book. And I got a couple more here that I am very intrigued to read. Some wonderful self-published books that I hope to be working in amongst all these other reads. Hopefully we'll get to one a month or so. I've got Jeff McIntyre's The Garden Gnome. I think there's going to be some humor in this one, but it is book 1 of The Theory of Magic. So that is going to be a fun one, I hope. And I've got a book sent to me actually by Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. It's Andrew Meredith's Deathless Beast. So it is the volume 1 of the, and I'm not going to say this correctly, so apologies already, the Kalatian Saga. So let's see when I can squeeze this in. It looks very intriguing, and Andrew is convinced that I'm going to love it. So let's see what happens. And finally, I also received 3 books from the author Michael Schultheis. Schultheis? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Schultheis, I'm going to go with that. That's more the German way of saying it, or unless you do say the TH, apologies. But anyway, Altar of My Fate. It's book 1 of the Rostival Saga. And again, I'm sorry if I am mispronouncing that, but there's some great art on these books, and I read the descriptions on the back, and they look really intriguing. So I'm excited to get to these as well. So yeah, that's pretty much, we'll see. As I said, it's a highly aspirational winter TBR, and if I'm fortunate, I will get to most of these. I did pretty well, actually, in the fall. I'm pretty proud of my fall reading, and so hopefully that momentum can continue. I'll be a very, very happily busy fellow, and I look forward to talking with all kinds of folks, fellow content creators on YouTube about these books, and hearing from you guys in the comments. If you've read these books, let me know what you think. And if you'd like to, let me know what you're planning to read this winter, or if you're one of those really organized people in 2023. All right, that's it from me from now. Until next time.